everybody. Merry Christmas and Happy New Year. Welcome to the Bob Stoops app, the Bowl Prediction Show. I'm Brad McMullen, along with Hall of Fame football coach Bob Stoops, and we've got a lot of games to talk about, but we got to begin with the cheesiest game of them all, the Cheez-It Bowl, which will fit Oklahoma 6-6 against Florida State, who only lost 3 games by a combined 9 points this year. Florida State looking every bit of the top 10 form that we thought we would see in Florida State just a few years ago, and things are looking really good for them. Of course, they beat LSU to start the season and have been very, very competitive towards the end of the year.
First of all, happy holidays to everybody out there. Enjoy. Yes, Florida State, Mike Norvell, their head coach, has done an outstanding job. And you know, give them credit at Florida State, because the previous couple years, you know, weren't very good.
No.
But you don't just, everything doesn't just change in a year or two. You know, you have to give them credit. And I don't know that things were in great shape when he arrived. In fact, from the outside, it looks like it really wasn't.
Yeah. If you look at the NFL draft the last few years, it wasn't like they had a lot of talent on the team either.
And so, you know, they've been patient with him. Mike knew what he wanted to do. And here in year 3, I believe it is, they look like what he wants them to look like. So he's outstanding job of building the team the way he wants them to be, the way they play. And, you know, the kind of culture they have, every player, I think, is playing in the game. No one's opted out. That tells you what Mike Norvell has built there of playing for each other, loyal to each other, to the team. He's building a strong team, and they have a strong team with being a 9-3 record. So give it to him. You know, that you've got to compliment him for that. And so, you know, OU, it's going to be a tough game. You know, no question. We're going to be without some players, but again, I believe in Coach Venables, the staff, and what we're doing, and building our own, you know, culture with the way Brent wants it to be. And you know, so, but it'll be challenging. You know, they've had an excellent year there at Florida State.
Yeah, and you look at the coaching staff of Florida State, they're saying, yeah, Oklahoma's going to be missing some key components. They've got a lot of talent out there on the OU side of the ball. It's just some of the fans haven't heard of some of the players they're going to be called upon in a big way in the bowl game.
Well, I think that's the case, and everybody wants their opportunities, and now some guys are going to have more opportunities. Well, take advantage of them. You know, some guys will be fresher, be more ready. They've had a full year to grow here. So now you get a chance in the bowl game to go out and make those plays and show what you're capable of. And you know, and it happens every year. I thought last year we were without a bunch of guys. We were without a bunch of guys last year. And then we, you know, certain guys stepped up and made more plays, you know. So that's what I hope we'll see this year.
I know we're both going to the game. Can't wait to watch it. Should be exciting. The point spread right now, 10.5 by Florida State. And it's because of how well Florida State has played this year. How do you see this game ending?
Well, you know me. I see OU winning. So I can't help it. That's just always the way I see it. So I'm sure the bettors out there will think twice about listening to me. But in my heart, I see OU winning, and winning outright in a tight game. But I believe our guys will be ready to play and play a great game.
Yeah, the important thing for Oklahoma is the health of their quarterback, Dylan Gabriel. He's healthy. He's practicing, preparing for the bowl game. We'll see how healthy the offensive line and who is actually playing on the offensive line. Your son's obviously playing at wide receiver. What do you think about the health of the Sooners going into this game?
Well, it always helps having a few weeks to get your legs back, legs under you, rest, heal. All of it is always a positive, and I believe that'll help us in the long run. And these extra practices will get some of the guys that'll have bigger roles, that have a little, you know, have less experience, will give them more opportunity to be prepared to play.
One of the big questions out there heading towards the offseason, though, is will Drake Stoops be back? You kind of know Drake Stoops. Any inside information you can give us on if your son will return?
Yeah, he's told the coaches that he's going to return for his next year and take his COVID year and work on some particular things that he feels he can be better at. And And so at this point, that's where it's at. He's set to play another year.
Well, that's awesome. Congratulations, Sooner Nation. Another Christmas present under the tree for you. All right, let's go through the other games out there. Wisconsin, Oklahoma State. Wisconsin favored by 3.5 points. But Oklahoma State has lost a lot of talent than they had earlier on in the year, especially that Bedlam game.
Yeah, being so close here to Oklahoma State, I'm able to hear more of what's happening, and so much change, with the roster here. I think would be hard to overcome, and I'm not close enough to Wisconsin to know maybe they've had a lot of turnover, with the new coaching staff and whatnot, but I don't without the quarterback and primarily, and then all the other change, I would be going with Wisconsin.
Yeah, if Oklahoma State had the team that played in Norman in Bedlam,
oh yeah,
I'm 100% thinking Oklahoma State's going to win this game by more than 10 points. But when you lose that much talent, I think Mike Gundy's one of the greatest coaches in the country, but that is a tall order in a bowl game.
I agree. I'm in your camp with Mike Gundy. He's a great coach, but just so much turnover in a few weeks. I think that's hard to manage, but if anyone can do it, it's Mike. He's a great coach, and it'll be challenging, but I think it's too tall of an order.
I do too. All right, moving on. Kansas and Arkansas. Both teams finished 6-6. Kansas in the Big 12, Arkansas in the SEC. Arkansas in the Liberty Bowl, though, only favored by 3 points, or just a field goal.
And I thought they just tailed off at the end of the year for whatever reason. I think Kansas will be excited and fired up to be in a bowl game after so many years. And I believe in what they're doing. They're playing well. They've got a good team, and I in my heart I'd take Kansas.
Yeah, and also the question mark with Arkansas. You have a number of players that have declared for the NFL draft.
Exactly.
You have some players that are going into the transfer portal. So it's not necessarily the same Arkansas team you saw play against LSU just a few months ago.
Exactly, and probably more turnover in their roster than in Kansas, and that makes a difference in these games.
Yep. All right, moving on. Next game, we've got Oregon, North Carolina. Both teams won 9 games on the season, but Oregon is a monster favor in this game by 15.5 points.
Yeah, I like Oregon in this. I do. I love their quarterback, Bo Nix. And I just feel that they've progressed through the year in a really strong way. North Carolina, again, didn't look great, there towards the end of the year. So I would take Oregon in this.
Yeah, I agree with you, Coach. I think the first 10 games you're like, hey, North Carolina's finding a way to win, but they weren't really dominating anybody. The last 5 weeks of the year, it was not good for North Carolina. All right, moving on. Texas Tech, Ole Miss. It is a 7-5 Tech team versus an 8-4 Ole Miss team. Ole Miss favored by 3.5 points.
Yeah, that's a tough one. I think Ole Miss losing to Mississippi State there at the end of the year is still stinging. But I like Texas Tech. I just feel, again, hadn't been to a bowl game in a while. They have something to prove, chip on their shoulder. Tech going against an SEC team. I'm going to take Tech that they're going to have a little more to prove and have a chance to get after Ole Miss.
Yeah, the first time in a long time Tech has beaten rivals in Oklahoma and Texas in the same year. So this is a good Texas Tech team. May not have shown up in every game, but should be a great game down there. All right, moving on. Other games. Texas and Washington in the game. The Alamo Bowl. Texas Longhorns favored by 4 points against a good Washington team.
Well, I thought Texas, it's hard to predict them. They seem to be up and down throughout the year. And, and why, it's hard to say. And Washington, I can't say that I've seen enough. I haven't seen them a lot on TV to really have an opinion. So I'm just going to go with Texas being in the Big 12 and that they're going to show up and, have a strong game. I know Bijan Robinson isn't playing, but the second guy I think was
just as good or better, and that's saying something.
As good. I know it, as I think Bijan's a special player, but the other back I can't think of his name. I've watched enough to think, boy, he's really good. So I think they'll be able to overcome that. And again, the fact that I hadn't seen Washington much, I'm just going to go with Texas.
Yeah, I can't root for Texas in anything, so go Washington. All right, Notre Dame, South Carolina. Notre Dame is favored by 2. South Carolina, if you look at the way they played at the end of the year, you would argue there isn't many teams as hot as South Carolina.
No question. Some huge couple of big wins towards the end of the year. In my opinion, that gives them a lot of momentum, a great feel good, excited about their practices. And I'd take South Carolina in this. Notre Dame's a good, of course, great program, good team this year, but I think the momentum that South Carolina has is going to help them.
Yeah, that Tennessee and Clemson game.
Absolutely.
Oh my goodness. You look at how Spencer Rattler played at the end of the year. Very good team.
Shane Beamer's done an incredible job there, and I think they'll be excited to play, and especially to play against Notre Dame. And Notre Dame's used to that, though. Everybody gets excited to play Notre Dame. So, and always a formidable opponent.
Yeah, I love South Carolina in that game. All right, Tennessee and Clemson. Tennessee, of course, will be without Hooker, the great, talented quarterback that had just an amazing year for the Volunteers. Clemson, 11-2. Very similar to OU last year at 11-2. They found a way to win some games. A lot of games very, very close. There's a lot of talent, great coaches over there. You just don't know what you're going to get until it's game day.
I agree with you. I love your analogy. Very similar to our 11-2 team a year ago. Just up and down, tight games, not dominant, in very few of them. So I think too now with the quarterback change, I think that's going to help them. I believe so. Although Tennessee losing their quarterback is a big deal. For some reason I just don't believe Clemson's nearly as strong as they've been, and I think Tennessee's a really good team. So I'd take Tennessee, and even without the quarterback, I'm sure they've got another guy that's ready to go that's going to be quality, and that they'll be just a little more consistent physically in what they're doing to beat Clemson. Clemson's just been too up and down this year.
Yeah, and I think this is a huge compliment. Brent Venables, he's not there anymore. The defense has really taken a step back at Clemson, and also the time period. So you've got Josh Heupel having plenty of time to prepare a backup quarterback to get them ready for the game. It's not like it happened on Saturday and we play on Saturday. They've had some time between. I agree with you that. All right, a game that makes you scratch your head, that always makes you wonder, does somebody know something? Alabama and Kansas State are playing, and most of the time you would sit there and say, well, Alabama's going to be a monster favorite against Kansas State. Not so fast as the great Lee Corso would say. Alabama is only favored by 6 points in this contest. In the Sugar Bowl, it's a 10-win Alabama team versus a 10-win Kansas State team.
Absolutely, Kansas State is better than everybody wants to think, or maybe the outside world thinks. I've seen them up close too many times. Very good football team, all across the board, running the ball, throwing the ball, defense, great coaching. They've done a great job there. Nick Saban always does, and his staff. Everybody knows, talented teams. They've got everybody playing, which again speaks to the culture of that Coach Saban's built at Alabama. I'd imagine Kansas State has everybody playing, because I haven't heard otherwise. So. Some reason in my mind, Kansas State is one of those teams. They have a chip on their shoulder all the time. They have something to prove, and to me that matters. And I believe they'll go in there, with that kind of attitude and play really well and win.
Yeah, I'm the guy that says it's Alabama. They've got a lot of talent, and they're angry for the way their season went. And I look at the roster, and you just look at rivals, and you say, all right, how many people were offered on Kansas State to play at Alabama? And the number, it's not very big. I just think there's so much talent. But that being said, I'm thinking back in the back of my head just when you were talking, TCU, undefeated, everything on the line. Kansas State won the Big 12 championship. Kansas State went to Norman as a monster underdog and they won, and they found time after time after time again. And it didn't matter if they had the quarterback or the backup quarterback or a lot of players in and out. They always found a way to be competitive. And you go back to coaching, and again, I'm not saying that Kansas State has an advantage over Nick Saban, but you look at the coaching style, the championships in the past that Kansas State's coach has been able to win at North Dakota State. I mean, this is a good football team.
Absolutely. Coach Klein and that whole staff have done a great job. Nothing fluky about it. They again, physical, tough, running the football. Deuce Vaughn, an electric guy out in the open field. Both quarterbacks have had success, a lot of success, and both have great experience. Truth be told, someone asked me who I said, I don't care, who's at quarterback. In my opinion, they're very similar players, and defensively, they're always solid, very good. So, and coached well. So I just feel they've got something to prove, and they proved it in the Big 12 championship game against a great TCU team that's in the playoffs, and I don't believe they're finished.
All right, should be a great one to watch. All right, speaking of TCU, they're going to be taking on an undefeated Michigan team that looked like the best team in the country when they played Ohio State. In the Fiesta Bowl, Michigan is favored by 7.5 points. Two good teams going to be squaring off. There
really is, and Michigan has been so good. And to go to Ohio State and win, and then not dominant, but very close to a 14 points,
Hey.
dominant fashion is really impressive. They made the definitive change at quarterback going with McCarthy, and that really, I think, started to propel them forward more. I don't want to pick against TCU or Sonny Dykes. I think he's done an incredible job, but I don't know. Just that win at Ohio State's hard to get out of my head. So I have to go with Michigan, and the fact that they got in this position a year ago and didn't play very well, I feel they've got something to prove.
Yeah, I think Michigan is really good. I think if you're looking at TCU versus 20 of the top 25 teams, you're going to really lean towards TCU.
Yep.
But when you're looking at Michigan, I think it's not just the Michigan team of this year, it's last year. Look at the consistency of how well they've played. The games in the past where it was a close game, they would always find a way to lose. They don't lose those close games anymore. In the rivalry game where they had an Ohio State problem, they've now won 2 years in a row against Ohio State.
Right. And I think the biggest difference defensively, Ohio State's so used to making the big plays as TCU is. And Ohio State had a hard time doing it. And Michigan came up with turnovers and stops, and you got to think Ohio State has the same kind of talent that TCU has. Yeah. And they matched up with them great defensively and really controlled them. And it's hard not to think that they can do the same thing with TCU.
Yeah, I love Michigan in this game, and that is not a slight to TCU. It just shows you how great Michigan is. All right, Ohio State and Georgia. Georgia only favored by 6 points in this game because you talk about it. Ohio State has plenty of talent. They do have the chip on their shoulder. You heard Ryan Day say a lot of people don't believe we deserve to be here. And we put on our list, we want to play Michigan again. And obviously, if Michigan beats TCU and Ohio State is able to beat Georgia, that will come true.
When a team like Georgia and Kirby Smart, I equate it to that team looks a lot like Nick Saban's teams at Alabama. If you're going to beat them, you beat them with big play offenses, with receivers, with big plays. A quarterback gets hot. That's how you beat them. I mean, we did it, and I think it was 14 with Trevor Knight, and had a ton of big plays. We played great defense overall. Came up with some key stops, and Ohio State can do that. They've got the electric receivers. They got C.J. Stroud, the great quarterback, that can make something happen. That can have those days, and otherwise you're not going to pound them to death and beat them that way. You got to have the skill and the speed and the quarterback to beat them, and Ohio State has it. So I'm talking myself into this. I'm going to go out on a limb. Ohio State's going to have one of those kind of days and upset Georgia. And Kirby Smart, Georgia, great football team. Love their quarterback. I mean, he's been incredible.
Stetson Bennett has been consistent.
Been so good. And And Kirby and his staff, defensively, they're outstanding. But, you have the skill, Ohio State does, that can make those plays. And you start making them, and all of a sudden you get somebody on their heels, and they're one of those teams, Ohio State is, that can make it happen against them.
Yeah.
And not everybody has those skill and the quarterback to do it.
Yeah, I agree with you. You look on paper, talent to talent, Ohio State has got a lot of talent. This is not a lopsided matchup. And I go back to this. C.J. Stroud is looking for a legacy game. He wants this game. He's fired up for it. That everybody is dialed in from Ohio State. And again, you're talking about the Final Four. It's the playoff. Of course, people are going to be dialed in. But I just go back to that one thing. I mean, their last taste was a loss to a very talented Michigan team. But this is the first time in over a year that Ohio State's been an underdog in a football game.
That's right. And like you said, they have something to prove, a chip on their shoulder. And again, I just believe overall they have the kind of skill that can challenge Georgia and get hot and have a chance to upset them.
Yeah, I don't know if Ohio State will beat Georgia, but I love them on the points, no doubt. I really think Ohio State's going to play great in that game. Well, Coach, thank you so much for your insight on all the big games. Can't wait to watch them with friends and family. I can't wait to meet up at the Cheez-It Bowl for the cheesiest game of all in warm, sunny Orlando, Florida. For Coach Bob Stoops, I'm Brad McMullen, wishing you and your family a very Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year.